Congratulations, graduates. The quaint village of Eichstätt lies in the middle of Bavaria, between Munich and Nuremberg, just north of the Danube River, on a bend in the river Altmühl. In 2008, this most picturesque of Bavarian towns celebrated its 1100th anniversary of its charter. If you visit Eichstätt today, you'll see they're the only Catholic university in Germany. You'll see the Bavarian castle of Willibaldsburg in the hills above the town. The Eichstätt Cathedral is there with its Baroque decoration, vaulted ceilings, and those peculiar Bavarian onion peaks. In fact, Eichstätt is such a picture-perfect model of what we think Bavarian towns should look like. It wouldn't surprise me if on your first visit you encountered men in leather lederhosen and green felt hats, beautiful blonde children carrying bouquets of Edelweiss back from their romps in the Alpine hills, and a hefty barmaid named Helga carrying 12 steins of beer at once, with pretzels in her apron. As you head out of town about a mile southeast, you'll find today a local police academy where the Eichstätt unit of the Bavarian State Police train. This academy, while serving a noble societal use today, wasn't always such a place of dignity, however. Between the years of 1939 and 1945, this was the site of a Olfag 7, Olfag being the short name for the German word Offizierlager, or officer's camp. During World War II, Olfag 7 was a German prisoner of war camp for Allied officers. Olfag 7 was built in September of 1939. For the next few years, British, French, and Belgian officers were kept there, as well as eventually Australians and New Zealanders. In the spring of 1943, the first American officers captured in the Tunisia campaign were interred in Eichstätt. September 1942, two officers proposed digging a tunnel north from the latrine into a villager's chicken coop about 98 feet away. The digging was difficult because it was fraught with rocky ground, but the tunnel was completed in May, and on the night of June 3rd and 4th, 1943, 65 officers escaped. Eventually, all 65 were recaptured, but they had managed to occupy over 50,000 police, soldiers, Home Guard, and Hitler Youth for over a week. After 2 weeks of detention in Willibaldsburg Castle, the escapees were eventually sent to Olfag 4. Another thing perhaps more interesting than the escape also happened in Olfag 4 or 7. In the winter of 1943, one of the prisoners, Richard Wood, organized a music festival with the music to be performed by the officers, all of whom were obviously men. Some of these officers were friends with the British composer, Benjamin Britten. And they had gotten word to him, somehow, that they were planning this music festival. In honor to them, Britten composed the choral work, The Ballad of Little Musgrave and Lady Barnard, for male chorus and piano. The score was secreted into the prison, one page at a time, via microfilm. Imagine the intense effort and labor that went into getting that music in there for this prisoner of war music festival. According to Richard Wood, the Battle of Little Musgrave and Lady Barnard arrived just in time for us to put it into the program at the end of the festival. Our resources and capabilities were brilliantly envisioned by the composer, and the result was a little work of 8 or 9 minutes, but of great dramatic force. The choir enjoyed singing it enormously in the end. Though it was quite foreign to their style, we gave it 4 times. The first time I heard the background to the ballad of Little Musgrave and Lady Barnard, I asked myself, as you may be asking yourselves right now, what in the world were these prisoners of war doing putting on a music festival in the middle of their internment in a German prisoner of war camp? Who does that? Digging tunnels from latrines and escaping, that I can understand. Singing ballads smuggled in via microfilm for our music festival? In the middle of this hell? That's hard to envision. That's almost impossible to understand. And then I remembered. I remembered what C.S. Lewis said in The Weight of Glory, particularly in the essay entitled Learning in Wartime from that collection. In that essay, Lewis addressed the question of why human beings, of all the creatures on earth, want beauty and knowledge now, and are not willing to wait for the suitable moment, which, he says in that essay, never comes anyway. Lewis says that men are not like the insects who seek first the material well-being of the hive. Men are different. They propound mathematical theorems in beleaguered cities. They make jokes on scaffolds. They discuss the latest new poem while advancing to take the walls of Quebec. And they comb their hair at Thermopylae. He concludes by saying, this is not panache. This is our nature. Lewis's point is that if we stop seeking after truth, goodness, beauty, knowledge, all the great stuff of life that makes life worth living, we'd cease to be fully human. Did you ever wonder why God chose to communicate to us through the scriptures and not, say, through interactive DVDs, web-based learning programs, or just plain old enjoyable video games? Instead, he chose to communicate his truth to us through the written word, which, when you think about it, the scriptures are a collection of songs, poetry, prose, allegories, metaphors, history, stories of heroes and wicked men, victories and defeats, culminating in Christ's victory over sin and death at his return. This last week, Mrs. Hollidge, Mr. Griffith, and I interviewed a young teacher applicant, a delightful young woman who had just recently graduated from Grove City. As we were concluding our interview with her, one of us asked her why she wanted to teach at Rockbridge. I want to help students become more fully human, was her answer. Well, as I said, we were trying to conclude this interview, but when an applicant tells me that they want to teach at Rockbridge in order to help young men and women become more fully human, that interview is going to last a few minutes longer. You see, what this young woman knew, what C.S. Lewis knew, was that the prisoners of Oflag 7 knew, was this. Learning isn't about acquiring knowledge, passing tests, getting high GPAs, or any of that hooey. Learning is about becoming fully human. Christ's favorite name for himself was the Son of Man. As the Son of Man, he was the ultimate human, the second Adam. And our quest to learn all that we can, to revel in all that is good and true and beautiful in this world, and to delight in all that sets us apart from the animals, as God's image bearers, is our quest to be more like Christ. Class of 2012, Jordan, Bree, Austin, Ethan, Josh, Rachel, Tony, Paul, Daniel, Emily, Arch, Liesel, Bassie, Molly, my charge to you tonight is to be like those officers in Oflag 7. No matter how difficult their circumstances, they chose to pursue their humanity rather than become the beasts that perhaps the German officers wanted them to become. They wanted knowledge and beauty so badly that they didn't wait for the suitable moment to come. They knew it never would. My charge to you is to delight in the glorious creation of your Creator, so that your thirst for truth and knowledge never becomes satiated with what you've already learned. If you're not already there, as none of you are, if you haven't yet learned all there is to learn, if you haven't tasted all there is to taste, if you haven't gone everywhere you want to go, then my charge to you is akin to that of Lord Wellington, addressing his troops at the Battle of Waterloo. Wellington, facing the larger forces of Napoleon, described the army he led as an infamous army, very weak and ill-equipped, and very inexperienced. But, as he spoke to his troops, he stirred them up, challenging them with these words: "Rise up and become what you are not." And with that, you know the story. They went on to defeat Napoleon and his troops. Seniors, my charge to you is to rise up. Become what you are not yet, but what you may become, more fully human as you slake your thirst in the beauty and knowledge of Christ and all that he has created for your good and for his glory. God bless you.